His name is John Bielenberg. Please welcome him.
It's really great to be here. This is my home turf. I live in Belfast, and usually I travel all over the world giving these talks, so I'm just really happy to be here. So what I'm going to talk about today is something I call thinking wrong. This is in Iceland, which is one of my favorite places. And I learned about this in 1990. I was working with an investment management firm called Concord Capital, and they had hired a behavioral psychologist from Cornell to look at how other investment managers were victims of their own, what they called heuristic biases. And I was just really fascinated by this, like that they were looking at how investment managers were humans and then capitalizing on this. So the way that he explained it to me, shark attack off the coast of California, people in Maine stay out of the water, right? So, A, shark attack, bad. B, stay out of the water. So that in people's brains, that synaptic connection it's like a superhighway, right? And so you alter your behavior even though there's no statistical correlation, right? So I started thinking about how in the creative process as a graphic designer, I was probably a victim of this. So you have this arrogance as a creative that you're brilliant, you're coming up with new solutions, and I realized that I probably had these super highways. Problem, boom, I went to a file folder full of solutions and started thinking about, well, what if it's not A to B? What if it's steaming round thing? Or, that the answer is someplace you don't even expect. Another thing that's really inspired me, I have a friend, brilliant neurologist named Mark Diamond, and I had gone to see the movie A Beautiful Mind, which is about a mathematician, John Nash, who wins the Nobel Prize for work he did 30 years before as a grad student. So I was talking to Mark about this, and he drew this on a napkin. 0, you're born. 18, you're at your physical peak, right? So you think, oh, I can run the fastest or throw the farthest. And he said it's also you're at the most robust processing power in your brain. And he drew another line he called wisdom and experience. He said in math and science, where these cross, enough processing power, enough wisdom and experience, was around the age of grad school, 26 to 28. Einstein came up with that at 26. And so I don't even know if this is true. I just really like the idea. But I thought there's probably something else happening in this age span between 20 and 30, that our synaptic connections are fluid enough and flexible enough to kind of reconnect in new ways. And if you think about grandparents or something, that kids these days, in my day, well, what's happened is their synaptic connections are calcified, right? So I was really interested in that age range, 20 to 30. And then I started thinking about there are probably naturally occurring wrong thinkers in the world. This is a guy named Philippe Starck, who's a brilliant industrial designer, Picasso, right? So I don't think these people try to think wrong. I just think their brains are probably naturally hardwired in a certain way. I think 99.5% of us actually have to work at it a little bit. The other thing that's really inspired me, this is my son Zane holding a frog in Belfast, and just this idea that we may be at or near these global tipping points, right? So you have climate change, peak oil, deforestation, species extinction, rise of population in China and India that want all the crap we have. So I don't know that we're at that tipping point, but we're close to it. And I started thinking about you can be pessimistic, right? So it's this kind of downward negative spiral. Or if you want to be optimistic, the answers are in invention, human ingenuity, creativity, and sort of design, right? So I invented this thing I call Project M. Moving from, this is where my studio is in California, to the coast of Maine in Belfast. And I was working half-time with my partners in my studio, which gave me about 50% of my time to devote to other things. And I said, well, what I'm going to do is gather a group of young people in that age range, put them in a place to invent projects using this technique of thinking wrong. This is the first group, 7 young designers from all over the world that's in Searsport, Maine. This is one in Costa Rica that we did in a conservation area. This is in New Orleans after Katrina, East Baltimore. This is in Iceland after the financial collapse there. This is in rural Connecticut. And this is Detroit and Frankfurt, Germany. So we've been all over the world. So I'm going to talk about some of these and the techniques we use to force your brain to think wrong. Our brains are designed really to think right. So if you right now I'm talking, right? And so I have a thought and I can vocalize easily. It's really, really hard to talk wrong, right? To put words together in a nonsensical sequence. So that just shows how our brains just want to follow these pathways. So one of the things I do at Project M is called 10 by 10 by 10. So usually I take these young people to places that are unfamiliar because I think that just opens up your mind to new experience. I send them out the first day, go to 10 different locations, talk to 10 different people, come back with 10 stories. This is in rural Alabama where we've done a lot of projects, and they went out to this area called Mason's Bend and found out that 1,000 out of 4,000 households don't have hookups for fresh water. They're either on shallow wells like this, which are contaminated with their own sewage because they don't have septic tanks, or they don't have any water at all. So we did this project called Biometer. And the goal was to buy these water meters, get the guy out to hook it up to the house. And then we made this big list of influencers, and we picked Oprah as our prime target because we figured if Oprah gets engaged, game over, we can buy water meters for everyone. You'll see how that comes into play. So we did this piece. These projects are really marginally funded by the participants, so we have to be extremely resourceful. We found this newspaper printer in rural Alabama that does community newspapers. So we got this big tabloid-sized piece for, I think it was about $1,000 for $5,000. Oprah has one, so does Paris Hilton. Charles Manson uses one every day. So the whole front of this is kind of thinking wrong about image and headline to engage people. Like, what's this all about? You have one too. Herbert Banks doesn't. Neither do Jackie and Damian Green. Hale County, Alabama water's not a right. It's actually not a right anywhere in our country. We just assume it is. Help a family buy a meter. And we raised about $60,000, hooked up over 100 families. And then this is my favorite part. This is really thinking wrong about t-shirts. We silk screened this t-shirt that said 425 decimal point because it cost $425 to get the guy out and buy the water meter. So we kind of flipped it from give a donation, get a free t-shirt to buy a t-shirt for $425 and sponsor a water meter. That's the group down there. And there's 2 of the people now work at Facebook, and Oprah came through and they were able to show her the newsprint piece, although she looks pissed off, so I'm not sure it's going to work. Another thing is, as designers especially, but really all of us are trained to think and then act. And sometimes it's good to just do something. So at Project M one year, this is in Alabama again, we just bought a shipping container. We just called up this place, $2,000. The guy came 2 days later and dropped this thing off, really not even knowing what we were going to do with it. We ended up coming up with this project where we painted it all white. That's what it looks like inside, and called it the Blank Lab. So the idea was to have this mobile container we could move around different areas and put whatever project we wanted in it. Got this used ambulance for free, chopped the back off, and then hooked up the trailer, went up to Providence, Rhode Island at RISD and Brown. They do a conference called Better World by Design, and then backed it into place and set it up like a photo studio. had everybody get another newsprint piece, and then they had to, these are all the students at RISD and Brown, agree to do something meaningful with my life, name, email, and then gave them a t-shirt, so everybody had a white shirt on, and then put them in there and photographed them. So the idea was to create this army of engaged young people that we could deploy on projects. One problem, our truck broke down immediately, and then we bought another one on eBay, and that one broke down, so the project's kind of on hold, which is also part of Project M. It's that, you can't be afraid of failure or the project augering in. Another thing is just sometimes you just have to rapidly prototype things. You can't sit around and brainstorm and argue about stuff. So we do this thing at the beginning of Project M, go around the group and reveal a hidden talent, like, I was a tennis champion, or I can juggle fire or something. And this girl, Rosanna, in the middle, was really into pie, which I think is kind of stupid, but her whole family liked pie, and at family Thanksgiving and stuff, they would bake all these pies. So they did this one-off event called Free Pie. This is on the streets of Belfast, right after the financial collapse, I think 2007. And there's just general malaise around the country. And it was just a genuine, authentic, engaging thing for people to do on the street. So it was kind of this pop-up event. And that was so successful. Newspapers, TV stations covered it. People talked about it. And we thought there's something around this idea of pie and coffee and conversation and bringing community together. So about 5 of the young people went down to Alabama, took over we have a lab down there, and did this pop-up pie lab, they called it. And for about $600 worth of materials, they set this thing up, and they built pie boxes and one big table, because in this part of Alabama, the black and white communities are very segregated. They have black churches, white churches, black restaurants, white restaurants. And one thing they never do is sit down at a restaurant at the same table. So we just had one table, and all of a sudden all these people came up and started talking to us over pie and coffee. And that was so successful that we got a space. This is on Main Street in Greensboro, Alabama. One of the things in Alabama, not unlike Detroit, is there's a lot of space you can get cheaply. Nobody's going to stop you from doing something. This is what it looked like when we started. This is about 110 degrees in Alabama. And it's just amazing what young people can do when you give them the opportunity to do it. Most of these materials we used were free or donated. These are these big rolling walls that kind of can reconfigure the space, made out of recycled sharecropper siding. This is a table, another big long table. This is all free Alabama cedar. This is what it looks like now. And this is inside. We actually came in second in the James Beard Awards for restaurant design, which is like the Academy Awards for the food industry. We lost out to the new Guggenheim restaurant, which probably had a multi-million-dollar budget. Ours cost $8,000. About $6,000 was for the heating. Things like these lights, these are just bulbs on cords, hung in a grid. Those chairs are from a closed school we got for free. And we're making pies and coffee. We also employ people in something called the Youth Build program. So the girl on the left and the guy under the order sign are earning their GEDs and learning a trade. It's now become a big community space where we have open mic nights, ballroom dancing lessons, business incubation classes. And so it's just become this kind of really vital place in the community. And you can see how we didn't know it was going to be a community space in Alabama. So that was that rapid prototyping, do the free pie event, get the pop-up store, and then the bigger one. Another thing is just sometimes you just have to challenge the status quo. And I'm a big bike rider. I just like bikes. I like what they do. They keep you fit. And especially young people in urban areas. It's just a really great way to get around. And if you look at Copenhagen or Amsterdam, how the public has reclaimed the urban space from the cars. And so there's this phenomenon, especially with young people, called the fixie movement. And I thought, well, if I can leverage like this trendy movement for single-speed bikes, maybe we can get young people on them. So we invented this thing called NADA, did another newsprint piece. It's all about less. Less is more: independence, health, freedom, sustainability, and fun. So it's really not a non-brand. So if you think about bicycle brands like
John.
There we go. Or Cannondale, how, it's all about the brand and they have the big logo on the tubes. Ours was all about the people, right, and the individual. So you pay $100 and your membership card is a bike frame, and then you build it up yourself. So we had a website like this, and you signed up, you put your picture on there. It's kind of like Facebook for this bicycle community. So that's what the bike frames look like. They were these steel frames, $100, you got one. And then it was all about how you built it up. So there's a real DIY thing here. It's not about what Trek thinks the bike should look like. It's about how you build it. That one was mine. Here's these guys in Brooklyn. They totally pimped out their bike. This one's in Alabama. And then we started thinking about, this is great. We sold out of all our memberships right out of the gate. But I thought, it's kind of weird that we're getting these bike frames from Taiwan and they're shipping them to the US. And I was reading this design magazine and I heard about this guy, Marty Odlin, who I actually saw in Camden just a few minutes ago. And he had started something in Brooklyn called the Bamboo Bike Studio, where they were making bikes out of bamboo. I called him up and I said, Marty, we've got bamboo growing in Alabama. This is right near our Project M Lab. And so he came down to Alabama and helped us figure out how to harvest it. And you have to dry it. This is flame treating. You have to get all the moisture out of it before you build. And now right across the street from Pi Lab, we have something called Bike Lab. These are the jigs. And now we're starting to build bikes out of bamboo. So what I love about this is how we started with this idea about getting people on the bikes. And now we're ending up in this place where we're creating this little economy and industry down in Alabama that desperately needs jobs. So then I got a call from the wife of the former governor of Alabama, a wonderful woman named Marcia Folsom. She had heard about Pi Lab, heard that we were building bikes, and she was involved in this big project to get bamboo grown across the black belt of Alabama. So it's very fertile, rich soil. And so we said, well, we'll brand this. Let's make bamboo equal Alabama like Georgia peaches or Florida oranges or Maine lobsters, right? So luckily it worked out, and with Alabamboo. We designed the logo to reference farm brands, so John Deere or Farmall, DeKalb Corn, because we really had to appeal to farmers, not to hipsters in Brooklyn. And then we had 4 Project M people come down and do what's called the Make and Ride. So in June, they came to Alabama. In a week, they built their bikes and rode to California in about a month. The last thing is less is more. And sometimes it's best when you don't have any money to do stuff. So this is last summer back in Alabama. And we found out that there's this Alabama Highway Depot where they put all the recycled road signs, and we can just get them for free. And then we also found out that basketball in this little community is like really big. The high school had won the state championship. And so we came up with this idea to make basketball backboards out of these recycled road signs. And you can't lose just from a graphic standpoint because you have big type and color and arrows and stuff. So that's what they look like. And I think it's sort of thinking wrong. Basketball hoops or the backboards are really traditional. They're wood or they're glass, but nobody ever screws around with them like this. So it's kind of like folk art crossed with basketball. So we have a Kickstarter site raising money to do this, again, to create jobs in Alabama. Last thing I'll talk about is just this, as I was doing this Project M over the last 8 years, it was by far the most fulfilling and fun thing that I did in my career. And I said, well, if this works for young people, inspiring them to have a positive impact on the world, why can't you take this pro? And so about a year, almost exactly to this day, I met this guy with the tie, Alex Bogusky, who is a famous ad guy, a maverick, sort of renegade creative guy, creative director of the decade. He had this big agency called Christopher Porter Bogusky. They did the Mini campaign and Burger King and stuff, and he had just quit. He said, I'm done, I can't do this anymore. Lives in Boulder, Colorado. We got together, and I describe it as resonating at the same harmonic frequency. So I was over here with Project M, he was over here with advertising, really wanting to do something meaningful with our energy. And this is a slide from Alex, which I think is really interesting, that you can tell who's in power by the height of the buildings. So you had castles and cathedrals, Capitol buildings, and now corporate towers are by far the tallest buildings in the world. And Alex's premise is that the one previous in power now works for the one in power. And we're seeing that in Washington. The other thing that shaped this idea is how corporations have amassed this insane wealth. So you have Walmart. The revenue of Walmart is bigger than the gross GDP of Norway, which is bigger than Dutch Shell, bigger than United Arab Emirates. The other thing is that brand value is often equal to the value of the hard asset. So Coca-Cola, half of the value of Coca-Cola is in brand. And this is really where Alex and I have spent our careers. And we started thinking about, well, could you unlock the value of capitalism and embed it with core values and create this new form of capitalism? And what we're trying to do is go from this idea of disposability to sustainability, secrecy, transparency, and then collaboration and community. So it's sort of using the power of capitalism to drive change, but embedding it with these core values and going from a trademark to a collaborative mark. So we invented this thing called Common, which is less than a year old. And the idea is to have a brand that's shared. So if you think of Virgin exists, I think, across 360 different businesses, from airlines to cola to music to vacations to space transport. So Common can be Common shoes, Common pizza, Common conference, right? But unlike Virgin, you share that. So anybody could start a Common business. And especially young creatives. So how do you kind of give a launching platform for social entrepreneurs? So this is the Common website. Any of you can go and become a member of Common. And you can submit ideas. We're doing a bunch of different kind of rapidly prototyping. Started something called Coffee Common, which debuted at the TED conference last year. Then went TED Global, it's going to be at TED again. We're taking the bamboo bike idea into Common as well. So we do these things called MBAs, maniacal business attacks, where they're kind of a rapid launching platform for social entrepreneurs. And this is the latest thing we're doing. It's called Common Pitch. We did one in Boulder, Colorado. And the idea is to do kind of a pitch like this event here, Pechakucha, TEDx, but make it more like the American Idol competition and make it fun. We had a rock band, and then we selected 3 projects, 3 young entrepreneurs. These guys are from Norway, who invented something called the Bell lamp, which is a solar-powered lamp. This is an amazing young woman, 19 years old, named Eden Full, who invented what's called a solar tracker for solar panels in Africa. And I'll leave you with this thought that we believe that saving the world has to be fun or nobody's going to do it. So thank you.